Through a macro lens, focus on a single flower, and the massive storm rolling into the meadow behind it fades into a hazy blur. Traditional therapy often mirrors this macro lens. The medical model zooms in on the self, looking at the person in isolation to find the internal root of a psychological problem. Relying on one rigid theoretical viewpoint forces the intricate, multi-generational reality of a family into a predetermined box. Meta-frameworks offer a different approach. Instead of isolating the subject, this model captures the entire ecosystem surrounding them. By treating the individual as part of a larger whole, the clinician accounts for the environmental and relational influences that a single lens approach misses. The logic driving this model is the theory of constraints. It starts with the premise that when people act, think, or feel in ways that cause distress, it is because a healthier alternative is currently being obstructed. The practitioner identifies the specific point in the system where that healthy behavior is being blocked. To clear the path, the clinician must map the family system to find exactly where that blockage is located. Effective treatment begins only after the invisible mechanics of the family are made visible and concrete. That visibility comes from the 7 lenses, a diagnostic tool looking beyond any single therapeutic theory. These perspectives evaluate the family through the lenses of organization, developmental processes, culture, mind, gender, biology, and spirituality. Using them together scans the family's ecology. A concern might look like an organizational problem on one layer, but reveal a cultural origin on another. Rotating through these viewpoints identifies the friction. A behavioral issue might stem from an unclear family hierarchy, a developmental transition, or an unaddressed medical constraint. This multidimensional check ensures the practitioner doesn't overlook a systemic blockage hidden in the blind spot of a more narrow theory. The 7 lenses register the system's assets alongside its frictions. Look at this immigrant family. A therapist focused on dysfunction might see them as isolated or at risk because they lack a traditional community support network. But viewed through a cultural or developmental lens, that same history is reframed as evidence of endurance and resourcefulness. This shift allows the therapist to move away from a deficit-based assessment and instead inventory the family's existing strengths. These existing resiliencies are the bedrock upon which the clinician builds the actual plan for lasting, systemic change. These 7 domains are recursive. They don't exist in isolated silos. A change in one area triggers reactions across the others. The family is a web of nodes, where a shift in one layer causes the rest of the system to adjust. For example, a biological constraint, like a sudden illness, changes a person's mental state. This internal shift can then force a total reorganization of how the family distributes its daily responsibilities. Seeing these cascading effects across multiple levels allows the clinician to finally understand the family as a reactive, living ecosystem. Once the therapist has this map of constraints and resources, the focus shifts to practical application. Because every family's map is unique, the treatment plan avoids formulaic, prepackaged techniques. The clinician selects tools based on where the constraint lives. They might use structural boundary work to stabilize a chaotic hierarchy, then shift to narrative therapy to reframe a family's shared history, targeting the specific blockages identified in the assessment. This creates a bespoke blueprint designed for the family's multifaceted needs. This tailored approach systematically dismantles the specific barriers identified across the 7 levels. As the therapist targets and removes these specific constraints, they simultaneously validate and highlight the family's hidden strengths. The ultimate goal is to make the therapist unnecessary by teaching family members how to manage their own relational environment. By removing the invisible blockages to change, the practitioner allows the family's natural capacity for growth to take over.